Scholes. She is the Vice President of Communications and PR at the New Orleans Convention and Visitors Bureau. Okay, sorry. She is a New Orleans native and an LSU alumni. She led all media relations and crisis communications for New Orleans' tourism industry after Hurricane Katrina, and she previously worked in Dallas at Meeting Professionals International and Edelman Worldwide. Like always, join in the combo on Twitter, #GoPRSSA. Everybody get a warm round of applause to Kelly.
Okay, y'all need to say good things about me on Twitter because my boss is probably watching. So, thanks y'all for being here. This is a great crowd for a Thursday night, so thank you for coming out. I'm going to go through our actual marketing plan for the Convention and Visitors Bureau and for New Orleans tourism industry. Mallory was telling me about some of the great speakers that you guys have had so far this year, and I know they've all done things a little bit different, but I'm going to actually show you our real marketing plan, things that we're actually executing right now. And if you have questions throughout the way, please stop me. And then I'm going to go through some tips. Whenever I speak to PRSSA or groups of PR students, I like to just give brutally honest advice, things that worked for me. When I was at LSU, I graduated in '97, so some of you guys were probably like babies at that point. But, you know, tips for what worked for me when you're in school, which the first thing you're doing right is by being here at PRSSA. Things to do when you're interviewing, and then things to do when you get that first full-time job. So I'll go through some really specific things like that. And then we also have internships available. So if you guys want to stick around to the end and come talk to me, if you're looking for internships, we have internships available all year round. Since you guys are at LSU, you'd probably benefit most from our summer internship program. Or you know, if you're graduating this semester and want to come and apply for an internship, please do that, because we have had some really great interns who have gone on to do really good things. One of our interns worked with us, and then she went on to graduate school, and all of the other students in her graduate class had to take a PR boot camp, and because she had worked with us, she didn't have to do that. So we were the boot camp. So internships are really important, and I'd love to talk to you guys if you're interested. But I want to just go over a little bit about tourism in New Orleans. I mean, everybody knows New Orleans. Everyone, you know, how many of you guys have, who has not been to New Orleans? Anybody? Okay. Okay, one person, okay. So everybody knows that New Orleans has a reputation as a party town, a fun place to go, great food. And so it's our job to really sustain that reputation. And everything we do at the Convention and Visitors Bureau is designed to drive the tourism industry in New Orleans, which is our most important industry. It's $5 billion every year. It employs about 78,000 people. And money that comes in through New Orleans tourism really is critical to the city. Things like, you know, funding for the Superdome and the Convention Center and the Regional Transit Authority, and just basic things like police and fire protection. So sometimes when locals say, who cares, why does it matter that all these visitors are coming in town? It means a lot, and it means a lot of, our economy would not run without tourism. And so that's our job, is to make sure that the visitors keep coming. You know, it might seem obvious that everyone just knows New Orleans and wants to come there, but that's not the case at all. And especially when you look at some of the things that we've had to overcome as a destination, things like Hurricane Katrina, the BP oil spill, you know, articles in the national media about things in New Orleans that are not going well, like a homicide rate or any of these things. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is crisis communication and how we've overcome some of those things to even get to this point, to be able to even implement the objectives that we're doing currently. Actually, good, I'm sorry. I'm going to some of you guys were probably in high school or even younger when Hurricane Katrina happened, but I really can't talk about New Orleans tourism industry and PR without talking about that, because it was one of those things like 9/11 that sort of splits time. Everything either happened before Katrina or after Katrina. And for us, you know, being in an industry that is based on image and perception, which tourism is, you can imagine when Hurricane Katrina happened and the whole world, the news coverage around the world was broadcasting, you know, terrible images of devastation. People, I mean, you guys may remember some of this, or you've seen it. You know, people on their rooftops, people stranded at the convention center, people stranded at the Superdome, you know, just this unprecedented disaster. And it was our job to say, how are we going to get visitors to come back here? First of all, we can't host them right away, but when we can get them to come back, how do you convince people that despite all of the devastation that they saw and all of the neighborhoods that were destroyed, that the historic part of the city of New Orleans, the French Quarter, and all of those things were fortunately intact? So if you look at the recovery of New Orleans tourism since this hurricane in 2005, PR played a very big role in that recovery. It would not be, the city would not be where it is today had it not been for our PR campaigns to get the message out that New Orleans was ready, when in fact we were ready, because there was a time when we obviously were not. But it was our job to make sure that we were being credible, we were being honest, and when we told visitors that they could come back, that that was actually true. And it's not just, you know, leisure visitors who want to come for a fun weekend. I mean, we deal with people who influence lots of other people. So convention organizers. You know, we deal with the people who are going to decide where 30,000 physicians are going to come for their annual convention. So what do you say to those people when they are watching the news and saying, New Orleans is destroyed? Even, you know, a year, 2 years later, we were still getting questions like, is New Orleans underwater? Do you have electricity? All of these questions that we were getting. And even if we convinced the meeting planner to bring his or her meeting back to New Orleans, then we had to turn around and convince 30,000 physicians that the city was ready, and despite what they were hearing and reading in the news media, that there really was this part of the city that was intact, that was not damaged, and that they were able to come to the convention center, stay in hotels, fly in to the airport, and have a successful meeting. Things like, are you going to have enough people to work in the hotels if half the population is scattered? Are you going to have people to drive my taxis? I mean, all of those things. And so PR was very critical throughout that entire process in sort of getting the city back to where it is now. So I'm going to show you a video of some of our PR results. This was about a year and a half after Hurricane Katrina. Some of the PR tools that we put into place to let the world know that we were open for business, we were ready for visitors. This is some of the things that we had to go out to the national media and let them know that. So take a look at this. Will it play on the All right, well, that's not going to work, so we're just going to go on to the presentation. But just know that a lot of our work, and we're really proud of the fact that a lot of our PR campaigns that we did after Katrina have won national awards. We've received probably about 10 national awards for crisis management and crisis communication that we've done after Katrina and after the BP oil spill, so we're really proud of that. And so just to kind of set the stage, you know, from about 2005 when Katrina happened until 2008 or 9, we worked really, really hard to get New Orleans even back to a, you know, basic level. So this is actually our 2011 marketing plan, but the plan that we're executing right now is very similar. So I'll just take you guys through this so you can kind of see how we're structured. And again, if you have questions along the way, please stop me. But the most important thing that our team does is, which by the way, it's me, and I have 4 full-time people that report to me, and then we have 2 interns. So we're a really small team with a pretty big responsibility. And that's why our internships are so valuable, because they really are, you know, part of the team and do a lot of things. We have a PR agency that's based in New York, and then we also have a social media agency. So that's a fairly small team compared to some other convention and visitors bureaus and other corporations out there. But the most important thing that we do is to get positive media coverage about the city, and that's not been very easy to do all the time. So, our team does everything from hosting press trips. That's one of the most successful things that we do, is having journalists actually come to New Orleans on assignment, especially in the years after Katrina. We needed them to come for themselves and see the city and see that it was open, ready for business, ready to welcome them. So, we deal with probably about 800 journalists on any year. We're always in some phase of bringing travel journalists into the city. So, we just had someone in from GQ magazine. Right now we've got a crew in from CBS Sports that are starting to do things about the Super Bowl that we're going to host in February. We, have Chinese television crews that come in. One of the articles up here you might not be able to see, but is written in, I think, Chinese. So we deal with journalists from all over the world. So that's why it's important for us to know how to deal with different cultures. You talked a lot about the diversity program and making sure that our team knows, if you're dealing with journalists that are coming into the city and they're coming from Spain, well, we're not going to send them to dinner at a restaurant at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when they don't eat dinner until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So having that, cultural awareness is really important, because we literally host people from all over the world. So just this year we've dealt with journalists from Brazil, Russia, Japan, India, everywhere. And so them coming in, if you do it right, it really takes a long time to put together their itinerary, figure out what do they want to cover, what places can we send them to in New Orleans that's going to really create the best story. And I'll tell you, if I spend $500 on a journalist airfare and have one of our member hotels give us a discount at their hotel and their restaurant, we may spend $800 per journalist. They're going to give us stories that are worth thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars more than that. So hosting the journalists are probably one of the most important things that we do. But it's also just, story development. I mean, we're lucky that the journalists come to us. If any of you guys have ever worked at a PR agency and they make you just cold call journalists and pitch stories about topics that, they don't want to cover, and you're having to just force it on them, that really sucks. I hope you'll never have to do that, because I did that when I started out, and it's not fun. So we're lucky that the journalists come to us and they say, what's going on in New Orleans? Can you tell us, the hot spots to go to? Can you tell us, what are the cool new restaurants? So really working with the journalists and helping shape their stories. We also did a lot of work to make sure that, if a journalist writes something that's not appropriate, I've called journalists before and said, why are you writing this? This is completely misleading or out of line. For example, when Time magazine, a couple of years ago, New Orleans was going through this crime spree, which is obviously, it's very difficult for us to sell the city and get visitors when it's got a reputation as not being safe. The Time magazine ran a story, and the headline was, "Is Baghdad safer than New Orleans?" It was absurd, okay? So that's the kind of thing that, we'll literally pick up the phone and call the editors and say, what was your basis for this? Why did you write this? Why is this? Where did you get this information from? This is irresponsible journalism. And so, most of the time we have really good relationships with the reporters, but then sometimes you do have to have those kind of uncomfortable conversations. But fortunately, if it works the way it's supposed to work, journalists and PR people really do have a good relationship. I've had people who have asked me, journalists who wanted to come work on our team, journalists who've moved on to other jobs and have asked me to be a reference for them. So, when you guys get out into the working world, really being able to have that connection with the media that covers your industry or your corporation is very, very important. Another thing that we do is make sure that, the magazines that are being read by our customers are reporting good things about New Orleans. So our organization has about 50 salespeople who are always out there selling New Orleans, selling, New Orleans as a convention destination, selling New Orleans as a place to have a family reunion or a destination wedding. So our sales team is constantly out there convincing travel professionals, travel agents, convention planners to come to New Orleans. And so our job is to support their sales efforts by making sure that all of the publications that our customers read, like Successful Meetings or Travel Weekly, which are not things that are probably on your coffee table at home, but things that our customers are reading. Making sure that they're out there getting the word out and letting people know what's new in New Orleans. And also the business media, like CNBC, making sure they know what's happening in New Orleans, especially when there's something like a hurricane or an oil spill, or it feels like there's always something that's going on, making sure that they know what's happening in the city and that they're reporting positive things too. I mentioned crisis management. I mean, this is an objective that we are measured on, that our board expects results, and we actually have an objective in our marketing plan that talks about crisis management. I mentioned some of the things about Katrina, but Katrina happened in 2005, and because of our PR campaigns, we were able to slowly, work our way back up. Prior to Katrina, we'd get about 8 million visitors in New Orleans. The year after the hurricane, that dropped to 3 million. And then after the next year, 2007, we had 7 million visitors, partly because of the marketing and the PR that we did to get the message out that you can come visit New Orleans. So 2007, 2008, 2009, the numbers steadily climbed, and we were on this roll. The city we had this great success story. People were coming back. Conventions were coming back. We were hosting big events like Essence Festival and Voodoo Fest and Final Fours and NBA All-Star Games. It was really amazing. And then the best thing of all happened, which was the Saints went to the Super Bowl. And that was the greatest PR gift you could have ever imagined. So 2010, we're like on this high point, right? The Saints had just gone to the Super Bowl. I can't even describe what that was like in terms of publicity value, right? I mean, it was the greatest gift. We could have never, ever told that story around the world in a way that it was told by the national media. We could have never thought of a marketing campaign that good. And if we did, we couldn't afford to pay for it. So having the Saints go to the Super Bowl was just so spectacular. There was international media attention on us in a positive way. And one of the funniest things was after the Super Bowl, a couple weeks later, I spoke to a group of advertising executives who were in town. And I talked to them about some of the things we were doing in the city. And I said, do you all have any questions? And at the end of it, this guy raises his hand and he says, hi, I'm from Dubai. I want to know where I can get a Who Dat t-shirt. I was like, how cool is it that some guy is walking around Dubai in a Who Dat t-shirt? That just showed that, the New Orleans brand and the New Orleans story of recovery, and who would have thought when the city was on its knees in 2005 that we would become Super Bowl champions less than 5 years later. So that was February of 2010. We were completely on a roll. And then what happens? BP oil spill, April of 2010. So once again, we were in the international spotlight in a negative way. And it was all based on, tourism is based on image and perception. So again, we're having to tell people, okay, there's an oil spill in the Gulf, but you can still come visit. Just like we had said, there's devastation in our neighborhoods from Katrina, but you can still come visit. So that crisis management, crisis management part became very, very important. So again, it was a situation where we were having to tell people the Gulf of Mexico is 100 miles away. There's no oil in New Orleans. I got a call from somebody in Germany that said, do you guys have oil on your beaches? And I said, we don't have beaches in New Orleans. So it was all based on a lot of misperception. People didn't understand where we were compared to the Gulf of Mexico, where the oil was. We had to make sure that we were being sensitive in our messaging. We didn't want to just go out and act like everything's fine, because there was this enormous tragedy going on. 11 people lost their lives in the oil spill. Everyone in America remembers seeing the pelicans and the wildlife with the oil on it and how heartbreaking that was. So we had to be really careful and make sure that we didn't look insensitive to how much of a tragedy it really was. But we needed to make sure that it was not going to become worse of a tragedy by making, tourism people lose their jobs in New Orleans and have hotels and restaurants lose business in the city because of misperception. So our job was to, again, clarify the misperceptions, make sure we were out there with honest, accurate, factual information, and everything we said, if we were to say seafood is safe to eat, that wasn't me saying it as a tourism marketer, because people would just think, oh, who cares, you're paid to say that. Everything we said was backed up by the scientist. So if we said seafood was safe to eat, we said that because the FDA and the EPA and federal officials who test seafood were able to tell us that it was safe. So this is one of our PR, part of our PR campaign to get the message out that you can come visit. This is with T. Martin, who is the proprietor of Commander's Palace Restaurant, which is one of our best restaurants. So take a look at this interview. This was shortly after the oil spill.
We have to have T. Martin. She's the co-proprietor of Commander's Palace. You're with us this morning. Got to ask you straight up, how has business been since all this has taken place? We're talking about a bad economy. Right. We're talking about rising unemployment. Right. And then we're talking about that oil spill out in the Gulf. Yeah. How has it been affecting you?
Yeah, take a lot of hits, can't we?
Absolutely.
New Orleans is on a roll. I know this is hard to understand, but we are not right on the coast, and the coastal communities are devastated, and our hearts are broken. I mean, these are our friends and our suppliers, but the city of New Orleans, everything you could always do, you can still do. And we've been on a roll since October, before that little football game we won, We really have been on a roll, and that football game was a symbol to us of the accomplishments of the last 5 years in this city. And the truth be told, right now, New Orleans is good. We are scared to death about the short-term and long-term future. But right now, we're on a roll. We just had a sold-out Essence Festival. Jazz Fest was fantastic. Coming up shortly, we have the Tales of the Cocktail Convention. Typical New Orleans, we have a convention for cocktails. It's fabulous. You should come. But really, I don't want to make light of the oil spill because it's scaring us to death. But so far, things are good. Last night, I'm eating seafood in my restaurant. It's amazing.
Well, how do you attribute that success, though? Because we've seen communities like Gulf Shores, Alabama. We've seen places like Biloxi where there are fewer people and they're hurting. Yet still, the people continue to pile into New Orleans.
Right. Well, there's so many misperceptions. As you say, Gulf Shores and these areas, so many of them are right on the coast. That's water, but that's not a beach. That would be the mighty Mississippi right behind us, and don't go swimming in there, okay? But what's happened to us is things here are not like that. The misperception is that there's oil, dripping off the balconies in the French Quarter. The only oil in New Orleans is on the marinated crab salad at Commander's Palace.
Okay? I'm going to ask you about that. I'm going to ask you about that right now, because we were talking during the break about how there is that misconception in terms of the oil and its effect on seafood. But you said in some respects, this may have been advantageous for people in restaurants.
Well, what people don't understand is that seafood is not really inspected. Meat is. If you process meat in any kind of way, there's a USDA inspector right there at your plant. That's not the case with seafood. Our seafood from the Gulf is being inspected and inspected and inspected right now by 5 government agencies. And so this is the most inspected seafood there is. And anywhere near the oil, there's a massive buffer zone. And there haven't been any areas that have had to be closed due to tainted fish being found, and there's been over 15,000 animals tested, and it's going to keep going. It's literally, last night, crabs, crawfish, drum, hake, it's all still here, and if you're getting it in a restaurant or a grocery store, it's safe.
Well, we got to wrap things up, but one last question. Let's say we have someone tuning in from the Twin Cities, or from New York, or from LA, and they're thinking about coming here, but again, it's that perception. What would you tell those people?
Come. Everything you want to do is still here. The food, the music, the architecture. This nation came and helped this city after the storm. Don't let us down now. And if you come to this town and you don't have a good time, there's something wrong with you.
All right. Well, see, thanks so much for your time. Have a great morning. Absolutely. That's the latest New Orleans, and you have the opportunity to come on down.
She's amazing. She did that
better in many ways.
She did that with no talking points, nothing, just off the top of her head. She is amazing. And so that's the kind of thing that our team did, was getting with those CNN producers and saying, can you please give us time to get the message out? Because it's and if you notice, what was the backdrop for that? They're standing in New Orleans with the Mississippi River right behind them. So, of course, when people tune into CNN and see New Orleans, they're going to think we're at, the height of the oil spill, which is not the case. So, just the fact that, we appreciate the airtime, and that interview was great, but just the fact that all the news media were stationed in New Orleans was very, very misleading. And those were things that we had to kind of say, can you guys give us a break? Can you go and broadcast from Ground Zero, which was Grand Isle or something like that? But they would all stay in New Orleans because it was the closest big city. So that was another example of, helping clarify some of the misperceptions. show you one other thing, since that other video didn't work. I have another one that shows you some of the interviews that we did. This was at the 5-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Again, our job was to figure out, we knew that we were going to have thousands of journalists. It's the first one. We knew that
You gotta love New Orleans.
We knew that there were going to be thousands of journalists coming to New Orleans 5 years after Katrina to tell the story of the recovery and what had happened in the city. So our team led a citywide effort, a citywide media center, so that we got together the PR people from every single industry sector. You know, our job is to promote tourism, but we knew the Katrina anniversary story was much bigger than tourism. It wasn't just about tourism. It was about housing and education and healthcare and coastal restoration and every single aspect of what happens when you formerly had your city 80% underwater. So we led a coalition of PR people. We formed a citywide media center. There was one place for all the journalists to come and get credentialed. We had a website where we had the latest information on the recovery of what is the status of housing, coastal restoration, the levees, visitor safety, everything. Mental health, all of the things, where they were 5 years later and where they were right after Katrina. So it was our job to try and as much as possible, positively influence the news media and let them know that 5 years later, New Orleans was a much better city for people to live, for people to visit, for people to come and do business there. And this is one of the interviews that was done with CNN that helped us get that message out.
You gotta love New Orleans.
You do, Allie. As you know, I lived here years ago, and I just love this town. It's a beautiful town. And I'll tell you something that everybody here knew right after the storm hit. They knew right away that if they couldn't bring tourism back, this whole place would be in trouble. Because frankly, I am standing in the French Quarter where for 300 years, the steady flow of visitors is what has made the town work. So right away they said, we must rebuild that part of our economy as quickly as we can, because without that, nothing else gets better. And I'll tell you, Allie, it's really working. Look at what they've done. It may be hard to believe, but New Orleans has 300 more restaurants than it did before Katrina. 1,100 in all. And at the long-standing landmark Commander's Palace, Chef McPhail is not complaining. That's more competition for folks like you, but you don't mind?
I embrace it. You know, all these guys are opening up these little tiny neighborhood, funky spots. And I'll tell you, it's a really, really exciting time to live here in the city.
Because it brings the whole place back alive.
That's right. And the food's fantastic.
Ever since the storm, this city has been aggressively rebuilding its tourism business, which the year before brought a record 10 million visitors and almost $5 billion to town. For the Superdome, that has been a $250 million makeover, $93 million for improvements at the convention center, and $400 million have been put into building up and repairing hotels all over town. And the return on that investment has been enormous. 85,000 people worked in the tourist trade before the hurricane, and 70,000 of those jobs have been recovered despite the recession. What do you want tourists to know about New Orleans who haven't been here since the storm?
Coming. We love them and we want them to keep coming back. And everything that they like and love about New Orleans is just like it was before Katrina.
Beyond the tourist attractions, stubborn troubles remain in many neighborhoods. But Kelly Schultz of the Convention and Tourism Bureau says for this key industry,
everything in New Orleans that was broken during Katrina is being fixed now, but not only back to where it was before, but even better.
That's not just a tourism sales pitch.
No, that's not a tourism sales pitch. That's speaking on, about the entire city.
There are still challenges, like convincing tourists that Gulf seafood is safe following the oil spill. But in this town that has already built up from so much, there is a sense that 5 years after Katrina, the future is much brighter than the past ever was. And you know, Allie, that's what you hear throughout this town, this sense that you gotta pull together on tourism, because they know they have serious problems in other areas that still will take a long time to grind out and solve. Insurance problems, housing problems, roads, bridges, all sorts of things are still dealing with. But the key areas, the areas that you would see if you come as a tourist, are as good, if as I've ever seen them, and frankly, I'd say probably better. And there's big agreement on the importance of that, all the way from people like Willie Pickett, the guy we rode around on the wagon with there, and also with Chef Tori McPhail over at Commanders. And I'll tell you, Allie, I know you're something of a foodie. You're going to hear more about Chef Tori McPhail down the line, I'm guaranteeing.
Well, I'll tell you,
I want to hop in the kitchen.
I love New Orleans, always have. I enjoyed Mardi Gras. I enjoyed the food scene. I enjoyed how warm people are. And I work with a lot of people who do a lot of traveling, and I've spent a lot of time on that bus over your shoulder. But you really are one of the most traveled guys I know, particularly in America. And you love the folklore, and you have something to say about every place you've been to. If you haven't been to New Orleans yet, what do you love about it? What's the great thing for somebody who hasn't been to New Orleans?
Well, I'll tell you something, Allie. This is the way I describe it. I mean, it's a charming city. It's lovely people. You're a tourist in other places. Sometimes you don't always feel so welcome as a tourist. Here, people take you in and want you to be family right away. And I'll tell you, for a long time, I had a paragraph that I clipped out of a newspaper many years ago that always said it to me. The paragraph said, New Orleans isn't so much like another American city as part of a foreign country that washed up on American shores. And it still feels that way, and I love it here, I feel at home here, and most importantly, everybody here wants you to feel at home.
Yeah, they're extremely warm.
Never more than now.
They always want to know your business, where you're from, and why you're there, and how many times you've been there. The food is fantastic. You can sit and eat for a long time, but there's that little bit of the culture. You see the French signs on the street and plaques that tell you about the history, so if you're a history buff, it's fantastic. It really is a unique city. It's the kind of place that you need to get to if you've never been to it.
Oh, you know it, Allie. It's a wonderful, wonderful town. As we say down here, hey, là-bas. Come on down.
There you go. Tom, great to see you. Say hello to the crew on the bus for me. I miss
that is what, 5 minutes? That is priceless. Like, we literally sent that out to every single meeting planner, every single travel agent, every person that we do business with, and we had groups booking the city directly as a result of that. So if you had any doubt about whether or not New Orleans was ready after Katrina, this is the kind of thing that our PR team was able to generate. And, I mean, the segment was great. And, by the way, all the facts that Tom Foreman read about the convention center and the hotels and all the renovations, I wrote every one of those words and handed him a piece of paper, and he read it verbatim. Okay? So that was pretty cool. That's like the best you can hope for when you're doing media relations. But just that, banter between the anchor and the reporter back and forth afterwards, that kind of thing is priceless. So, when I say PR was really important in the recovery, it really, really was. Next slide. Another thing that our team is responsible for, or actually let me stop here and see if you guys have any questions so far. Any questions? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so you were talking about that technical conversation between LSU and so did you guys also kind of prep Allie before too, or you just
No, I mean, we actually didn't. He knows about the city. I mean, we had worked with Tom Foreman and his producer on that segment, but we had not prepped the anchor. So, and that was just kind of a nice, surprise, I guess. Unfortunately, he was familiar with the city. So. Any other questions about what we've covered so far? Okay. Just quickly, I'm going to go through these last two real quickly and then get through all the tips of stuff that you guys, I think, should be doing to get good jobs. Another thing our team is responsible for, mainly we're responsible for bringing visitors into the city and getting positive press coverage about New Orleans, but we're also responsible for an entire local advocacy campaign. We are a nonprofit organization, and we get our funding through the state of Louisiana partly, and through the hotel tax, but what we get for New Orleans to market itself as a destination is far less than what other cities have to market themselves, as a destination. For example, San Antonio has like a $16 million budget to advertise and promote itself as a destination. We have $4 million. So we realize that, what we have to do is tell the community, tell legislators in Baton Rouge, tell business leaders why tourism matters to them and what the CVB does to drive that tourism. So my team is responsible for a local publication called Tourism Matters. During National Tourism Week every year, we do a big travel rally to showcase why is tourism important to the economy, why should people care about it, all the things I mentioned before about money for police and fire protection and driving our local economy. It's our job to educate people on that and to let them know that tourism doesn't just happen on its own. It takes aggressive work. It takes constantly getting out there, getting your message across, and letting them know that these visitors don't just come on their own. They're coming as a result of our influencing them and us working with them and us working with the journalists and getting stories placed like the one I showed you and all the, thousands of others. So being able to, go onto the local news. I do a segment every first Monday of every month on Fox News. Like the local New Orleans media has been great about allowing us airtime to go on there and talk about different things that are in the tourism community and why that matters. So it's nice to see that, locals are understanding more about what we do, and government leaders who are really the important ones that, they have to decide on what they're going to fund when they've got to fund education and hospitals, and then we come in there and say, well, we need you to give us money for marketing. And that seems so frivolous, so we have to be able to prove why every dollar you invest in tourism marketing brings back about $17 to the state, and what does that mean? So being able to work locally is also something that we're responsible for. Another part of our PR team really integrating with our sales team is that we have a full-time director on my team who does nothing but work with convention groups. So once a convention sales manager gets an organization to say, yes, we're coming to have our meeting in New Orleans. Like right now, we've got about 6,000 plastic surgeons that are in the city having their convention. Once the meeting planner convinces them to say, yes, we're having our meeting in New Orleans, then they turn it over to our team, and we work with their PR people and say, what are all the things that we can do to get your, plastic surgeons or whatever group it is. I mean, we deal with, so many different industries, so many different professions. What we're doing is the same throughout, which is PR tools for New Orleans and promoting New Orleans. But we have to do it for plastic surgeons or school teachers or engineers or, PR people who are coming in for a conference like San Francisco just hosted for PRSSA. So our PR director will sit down with the groups and say, what can we do on social media? What can we do with the local news? How can we get your people excited about coming to New Orleans? And we are one of the only convention and visitors bureaus in the country that has a position devoted to that. And it's a nice thing to have, and it's something that our convention customers tell us, you guys need to go teach other cities how to do this, because very few CVBs have a focus dedicated to this. And this was really critical, this position was really critical when there were so many misperceptions out there. So, the meeting planner would say, okay, there's some rumor going around that, New Orleans isn't ready, or that there's, the seafood isn't safe to eat, or whatever. So integrating PR into the sales process before they make the sale and then after they make the sale is very important. We also need to, our job is to promote New Orleans as a destination, but it's also to promote ourselves as an organization. We want to maintain a positive reputation for the New Orleans Convention and Visitors Bureau itself, just like any company wants to have a positive image out there. So we use things like, my boss, our CEO, Stephen Perry, is on national boards. Like he serves on the national board of the U.S. Travel Association, and he does things like try and make it easier for people in other countries to get visas to be able to come visit the United States. Part of our PR job that we are measured on is telling that story and telling people about what an honor it is for New Orleans that he's invited to be at this national seat at the table for the travel industry, but also what does that mean when he's successful getting more visitors into the U.S., that means more business for New Orleans. So that's a real honor for our organization that our CEO is asked to do those things. When, our team has won 15 national awards for crisis management over the years. We tell that story. We're proud of that. And so that's part of, maintaining a good reputation for the New Orleans CVB. And just finally, our team is also responsible for social media. It's several years ago, I had to really go and fight some of the leaders in the organization about why we needed to have a presence on Facebook and Twitter, which now it's so common, but I had to really go and fight and say, we have to do this and we have to do it right. And a lot of our, some of our, board members would say things like, and this is like 3 years ago. I mean, now they get it and they have funded it and they've allowed us to bring in an agency to help manage it. but they would say things like, why do we care? Why do we have to be on Facebook? Well, if somebody is, for example, we had a situation recently where we had a group of people who were in town for a convention where about 20 of them became sick with food poisoning. I want to know, it turned out not to be food poisoning, but that's what the initial report was. I want to know if people are on Twitter saying, oh God, I came to New Orleans and I got violently ill, right? I want to know what people are saying. I want to know if we host a journalist and he or she takes a photo of their meal and tweets it out to thousands of people, which is a really positive thing. We need to know what they're saying, and we need to be part of that conversation. We've had our Facebook, in a year and a half, our number of Facebook followers has increased by 542%. And I said, what salesperson can say to you that they have increased their productivity by 542%? You can't do it. So we really use social media for contest. During the oil spill, we did a photo contest on Facebook called Let's Do Shots, like shots, okay? And we had people submit their photos of them having fun in New Orleans and showing that, it was okay to come here despite the oil spill. We just did another Instagram photo contest where we gave away prizes to people who submitted their best photo of New Orleans. And it's a great way to just, extend our brand, connect with our customers. We find that if someone does say something negative about New Orleans, which isn't very often, that there are so many ambassadors for the city, we don't even have to respond. Like 20 other people will respond to them first and say, you're wrong about New Orleans, and they'll automatically take up for the city. So, again, it's promoting our members. We're membership organizations. We have about 1,100 members. We want to always connect with their social media channels. And again, we've been able to show that there's a lot of engagement out there in the social media, but it didn't just happen on its own. Like, I had to really go and fight for it and explain to our board of directors why it was relevant and why we needed it. And now they've been able to see over the last 2 years that we have a professional firm that helps us. They've been able to understand why, I went and fought for it 2 years ago.
Question. Well, your interns help with social media.
Yes, our interns do social media.
There you go.
So, give me your resumes, because we need help.
We have 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Okay. Questions.
Just quickly, the way we measure our success, for the PR stuff, we can look at perception studies. We've been able to look at, the years over Katrina, how perceptions about the city have changed. We measure our success by the number of convention bookings, the number of visitors. Really proud that we went from 2006, 3 million visitors, to 2011, 8.75 million visitors, which is an amazing accomplishment considering where New Orleans started. And then we also look at things like hotel occupancy. But I just want to close with a couple of things that I said, a list of tips that Mallory's passing around for you guys. These are things that have worked for me in my career and that I just wanted to pass along in case it is helpful for you guys. But basically, before you graduate, you're obviously all doing the right thing by being involved in PRSSA, and this is a great turnout for the meeting. What's even better than just being a member, if you can get involved in your chapter leadership on your board, like Mallory has done as being president, that's going to stand out on your resume. That's going to be even more important. So now your faculty advisor talks about the commitment that it is, and it is a big time commitment, but it really does pay off. So if you can become an active member or serve on the chapter leadership, I highly recommend that. You can get involved with PRSA. Go to your local PRSA meetings. If you can go to the national conference. All of those things. I know it's a big investment and it's very expensive, but it's well worth it. Internships. I don't even hire interns unless they've had previous internships. So you can never have enough internships. I recommend that you all intern at a media outlet. If you work at a newspaper or radio station or TV station and get a sense of how the news media work. And then also interning at a PR agency, if you have that opportunity. You will learn right away how to multitask, how to pitch stories. You will learn the industries that you like and the industries that you don't like. So having the multitasking skills of someone at a PR agency is very helpful. And finding a mentor. When you go to the PRSSA meetings, find a professional, that's someone that's out in the world working in PR every day that you can learn from and have them be your mentor. When you start interviewing, you need to find something that you're passionate about. I love New Orleans, so I promote New Orleans. If you're a cancer survivor, you should go work for the American Cancer Society. I mean, if you're going to be working a job 50 or 60 hours a week, you want to love it. And you don't want to be in a situation where you don't believe in the cause or you don't believe in what you're doing. So if there is something that you're passionate about, pursue it. Nice thing about PR is that you can do. Sorry, I don't have it memorized. I didn't hear it. You can take that. If there's something that you really believe in, or there's an industry or a cause or an organization, go and do that because it's going to make you a lot happier in the end. When you're interviewing, make sure that you realize that you're an intern and that don't demonstrate a sense of entitlement. I see that a lot, and a lot of people believe that they're going to graduate and just walk into the corner office and be paid $50,000 a year in their first job in PR, which is not going to happen. You have to kind of pay your dues, so demonstrate that in an interview. It's not appealing to an interviewer when there's someone who, even if you've done really well as a student and you've been involved and you've done great things in internships, know that you're an intern and you're there to learn, and you're there to learn from people who have done it longer than you have, and that you're not going to get, told you're doing a good job just for breathing. You need to know that you need to demonstrate to them that you're prepared to go in and work hard and learn and do everything you can to contribute to that team. And also, send a handwritten thank you note. That's, seems really obvious, but doing an email follow-up is not as professional as actually writing a handwritten thank you note to the person that interviewed you. And then finally, in your first full-time job, just show initiative. Be the person that takes on the project that no one else wants to do. Get there early, stay late, ask your boss if you can work nights or weekends. Even if you don't really feel like doing that, do it anyway. Ask them if you can sit in on certain meetings, that maybe the CEO is having a meeting or senior level people are having a meeting. Ask them if you can go and participate in that or observe that meeting. And we do that with our interns, and it's a great experience. Learn how to take constructive criticism. That's, again, something that, if I edit your press release, it's not personal. It's going out with the organization's name on it and my name on it, so I want to make sure that it's to the standard that it should be. So learn to, take constructive criticism and not, don't let it hurt your feelings. It's going to help you learn and grow. I started off my career at Edelman, and I got that stuff that was like bleeding with red ink, and it was, really hurtful at first, but it helped me learn. Don't submit any assignment without triple checking it for accuracy. I cannot stand when something comes across my desk that has typos on it or it's not, proofed. Which again, all these things may seem really obvious, but these are things that, I've dealt with and have done myself. So make sure that before you turn something into your boss, give it your best effort. And if you can't find something, be resourceful and try and find it. And so when you know that when you present that assignment to your supervisor, that it is your best possible work, and then they'll coach you from there if it needs any improvements, and it may not. But just make sure that you're always making sure things are accurate, it's fact-checked, it's grammatically correct. All of those things are really important. Dress as professionally as you can on your budget. I know you probably start off not making that much money. I certainly didn't, but just dress conservatively and dress professionally and dress for the part that you want, which is what I was always told. If you can help your older coworkers on social media, that's always a benefit, because not everyone has grown up with, using social media like you guys have. And finally, just, stay focused, work hard. You guys are going to have a great education at LSU. You're doing the right thing by being involved in PRSSA, and just know that if you work hard and you do something that you believe in, you're going to have a really, really long and fulfilling career. So I wish you guys lots of luck, and I'm happy to take any questions. questions? Yes.
You mentioned that y'all have wanted like 15 awards for crisis communication. After Hurricane Katrina, were y'all solely responsible for revamping was an interview to partner with other local agencies of the government to get that message across?
It was sort of everyone's responsibility. I mean, we worked with groups like the Louisiana Restaurant Association, the Hotel Association, with the Mayor's Administration. We actually formed a group called the PR Council, and so we led the development of a group of PR professionals throughout the city. So PR people at the airport, museums, the mayor's office, FEMA, all of those groups, to get them together to make sure we were all on message, we were saying the right things. There were so many facts and things that were changing that we needed to constantly get out there, like if we added a new restaurant that reopened, or if a hotel reopened, or if a big convention just signed, making sure that all of us had the same messages. But we sort of led the development of that PR council, and it really helps. Anybody else? Yes.
For like communication, y'all like put up like a VR council. Is that something that even if there's not really a consistency that y'all can communicate on?
Yeah, we do. We've the PR council was created right after Katrina, and it's never disbanded. So it's actually been a really good thing to have that group around.